Today, I want to show you how to recreate a design. So first, I import my design into Cricut Design Space, and I always like turning off those grid lines. And then I go ahead and I start creating with some basic shapes. So I can see that the little tail of the fox is basically where two circles would interject. So I just insert two circles. I make sure that they are aligned and at the same height. And then I just go ahead and slice them out together. And then I am left with that inside piece. So I can just delete the other ones that I don't want. And then I can manipulate that one by unlocking the little lock. So I can change it, the height and width independently of each other. And then I just rotate it, and I always like placing it right on top of the image that I'm replacing, just so I can see if it works. And then since it's pretty symmetrical, I just duplicate it and put it on the other side, flipping it horizontally. And then I just keep going like that by duplicating them and rotating them slightly to create that fan of tail behind our little fox guy here. So I just do one side first, and then once I'm happy with how those look, I will go ahead and do the other side. An important thing to remember here is that you will never get it 100% the same, but that is not our goal here. We're trying to kind of recreate it using the tools that we have. So we're not looking for it to be 100% the same, but taking our inspiration from it. So again, I'm doing the same thing here, just duplicating them, flipping them horizontally for the other side. And then there is one more that I'm going to put right there. And then to avoid it getting overcrowded on my screen, I will go ahead and select all of them and go ahead and weld them. You can also leave them separate and have that distinction if you prefer that. I thought this would be really cute to have it all as one, maybe use a pattern vinyl or something like that behind it. And then I'm checking here to see if that's going to work for my fox's face, because as you saw underneath, it has like the little pointy sides, but I decided that it really only works for the bottom half, but then the top half looks more like a circle again. So I insert a circle and I manipulate that to make it fit and put it right over there. And then I can go ahead and adjust it some more. And again, go ahead and take both of these images and weld them together into one shape, just like the fox's head. And at this point, just to make it a little bit easier for myself, I like to start changing around some colors to keep track of what piece goes where as I'm starting to put together my fox. So I'll make the tail a dark orange and his face a lighter orange. Now you can see it doesn't look like much, but when I had it on top of the little fox guy, you could see that it was very similar. Now let's go back to the ears. Again, as I was showing you there, it looks very much like the intersection between two circles. So we're going to go ahead and do exactly the same thing again. We're going to insert a circle, duplicate it, and then have it intersect. Select both of them, align them vertically so they're at the same height, and then slice it so that we have that inside part. And we're going to go ahead and use that for our ears of the fox. And again, the ear shape is going to be slightly different than how it is on the fox right now, but that's okay because it is our very own image. And so I'm going to do the same, duplicate, and then I'm going to just rotate it to fit there. And then I'm going to go ahead and weld it onto his face. And of course here you can start adding more details, less details, depending on how you want it. As you can see in the ears, there's some white in there, which you could add. I decided not to go for that. And for some reason, I keep clicking the upload button instead of the shapes button. So ignore that. Now I'm going to go ahead, make his little feet, who are cute and adorable. And I basically do the same thing over and over again. I grab basic shapes that kind of look like what they look like on the fox, and then I manipulate them by unlocking the lock so I can change width and height independently of each other. And I just go ahead and manipulate it, and then using my image as a reference, put that all together. And now I'm creating the body. In our original one, the body is kind of hidden by the trick-or-treat basket, but it is not Halloween, so my little guy is not going to have a trick-or-treat basket. Which is another great thing about recreating it, is that I can just make that change if I want to, and it doesn't have to be a basket. So let's go for the eyes. Those were actually one of the hardest things to master. It kind of looked like having two circles overlap at the top. So that's what I'm using as my initial piece. So I'm going to, again, slice that out and then get rid of all the pieces that I don't need. And that is the one that I want. And so I'm going to manipulate it to look a little bit more like that shape. And that's when I realized that I got the shape, but I didn't really get the right size. But thankfully, we do now have the awesome offset feature. So I am going to go ahead and use the offset feature to make those a little bit thicker. So I tried doing it like that, and then I very quickly realized that I couldn't see what I was creating. So I moved around on my screen a little bit so that I could use the offset feature at the same time as I could see what I was doing. And as you see, the first suggestion is way too big, so I'm trying to drag it back, but it defaults to 0, which was not enough. So I'm just playing by typing in some numbers, so you can get a lot more accurate by typing in the numbers than using the sliding scale. So I just keep playing with numbers until I think that the offset around my shape looks about the right thickness for his eyes. And then once I like what I have created, I will go ahead and hit apply to solidify that. Once I have applied that, I can get rid of my smaller piece and again duplicate this newly created eye shape and flip it around for the other side. And move it where I want it, and then I'm going to move over my whole fox so I can make sure that it all fits and I know where it's going to go on his face later on. And I can move it all together. And at this point, I decide to go ahead and create the rest of his face. So he has a little triangle as a nose. So I'm going to create that. And then at the end, I can just attach all of his facial features, which are all going to be black together, so that they're all going to stay together where they need to be. So I put in his super cute little nose, and then I get to his mouth, which was also somewhat tricky, but again I decided it looked very much like where two circles intersect at the bottom. So I go ahead and do that same thing again. I see if I can manipulate it a little bit by making the top one a little bit bigger, instead of having this like very thin side pieces. So again, deleting what I don't need, and then I am manipulating that into a smaller shape. Then as you can see on his mouth, it has like two of those little dips, so I'm duplicating it and overlapping it. And then I have a hard time seeing if they're really how I want them to overlap with how small they are, but I go for it anyways. So I place them where they belong, and then I can go ahead and attach all of the black features together. And now that I put my fox behind it, I can kind of see that the white part really is making a big difference. And so I want to go ahead and recreate that white part in the background as well for my little fox guy. So once I have his facial features attached so they don't move from each other, I want to go ahead and recreate that white part as well. And now I'm going to try and move over a little bit so I can see both of them better. And it's glitching there a little bit, it's fixing itself. And then here I show you what I'm about to create next. It looks like having like two circles that are kind of like cutting in there. So I try to just use a circle at the bottom and then realize that it's not really pointy enough. So in a moment here, I'm going to change my tune and decide to go a different route. And often I go ahead and click off of it just so I can see better the shape that I'm going to have left over once I slice. So I recommend that, just so the box isn't in the way. I'm trying to make it bigger because I already realized that I don't really want that weird corner there where it like swoops up in a half circle and then cuts in. It's not at all how his face is, and I don't think it's going to look right. So I decided to replace that with the pointy one right there. And then I feel like I'm getting a lot closer. Now I want to make it a little bit smaller than the existing feature. And then I put that in there. And again, I double check with the original to see if I feel like it looks correct, decide to move them out a little bit. And then I go ahead and slice one with the other, because each time I slice I can only have two selected. I can't have both of them selected, and so I have to go through and slice twice. And then remove the pieces that I don't want, and then I realize I've created these weird little corners on the side that I don't want. So I'm going to have to do a little bit more slicing to get rid of those, to really get nice clean corners like I did on the other one. So I'm just going to place that in there right on that corner, so I have this nice little swoop just like there. And then before I slice, I always want to make sure I duplicate it. Otherwise, it's going to be really hard for me to get that same shape again. Then I place the other one, and just like before, I have to slice them one piece at a time. When it comes to slicing, I always tell everybody it's a little bit like having just one cookie cutter and one piece of dough. You can't cut out two cookies at the same time having just one cookie cutter, so you have to do them one after the other. And that's what I do here. Then I make it wet and put it where it belongs and decide that looks pretty good. It looks a little bit off center to me now looking back at it, but I love symmetry. I'm very fond of it, and so that bothers me a little bit, but it might not bother other people at all. So I might go back and fix that later on, but you don't have to. It looks good the way it is. And then right there, I was just moving that white part backwards. So every time you hit a move backwards, it goes just one step back. You can see it on the right side. It goes one layer deeper. And there were quite a few layers in front of it. So I had to do that a couple of times. And now I'm just adjusting it. That's when I realized it might be a little bit crooked. So I'm trying to move it to better adjust, and there we have it. There is our fox. It looks really cute, and now we just have to figure out what we want to put in front of it, because like I said, it's not Halloween. I don't want a little pumpkin basket, so instead I decide to go for a very traditional and classic hot coffee cup. And so to create the bottom shape of it, I'm going to slice the top off of this shape that I always forget what it's called. And then I can go ahead and manipulate it to look more like our typical coffee cup structure and put it in front of my little guy. Make sure it has the right size. And now he is happy about his coffee, like I would be right now as well. And that looks good. Now I'm just going to go ahead and add a little white circle in front of it so we know. Oh no, actually I'm creating the top for it, the lid, so it's not so straight. I always like adding a little circle on top of it. I'm going to center that. And then you can weld it. I usually like to attach it just so you can see the difference in the cup. It makes it look a little bit more realistic for me. And then I try to move over way too far and struggling here a little bit to make sure I have both of them right next to each other so I can really see what I'm doing. And then I decide that I need to add a little circle in front of my coffee cup just to make it a little bit more visual that it is a coffee cup. And so I add that little element there, and then I also decide to change the color of my coffee cup from the default like grayish black color. And oh yeah, decide that he needs a couple of paws to hold his coffee. So I'm gonna go ahead and create those. They're not really that visible in the original, but I'm just winging it here by creating a shape that's very similar to the feet that I can put in front of it. So again, duplicate, flip, move it over to the other side, and then I take them both and I attach them, and then I move them over, and then I realize that that doesn't make a whole lot of sense because my coffee cup is much wider than the pumpkin was, so I detach them so I can move them individually, and now it looks like he's actually holding his little coffee cup. I'm not going to weld the hands into the body just because I think it looks more realistic if they're sticking in front of it. And then I play a little bit with the shape and sizing of the coffee cup, just because I felt like in relation to him, the coffee cup looked a little bit big. But then I go like back and forth between the right size. Here, just use your eye. Use what looks correct to you as you are manipulating your image and putting the final touches on it. And as I said, you could have done a lot of more details if you wanted to. You could do less details, but I'm pretty much done here. So I'm just hiding my reference picture, and then here you have it. We are all done with our fox.